Sometimes, game design ideas that look amazing on paper fall flat when you try and implement them. Is the idea bad or the implementation? How do you know where to start looking for answers? Do you need a fun doctor? I'm Tess Tanenbaum, and today I'm going to be talking about verbs in game design. This is the second of a series of videos on fun doctoring. These videos will be short, and I'll end each one with an exercise that you can apply to your own game design practice. In the previous exercise, we looked at the first 30 seconds of gameplay experience. Today, we're focusing on something even smaller, moment-to-moment gameplay. If you play games for long enough, you eventually experience some aspect of a game that feels like a grind, like a fetch quest where you have to run across an entire zone of a game for hours just to deliver a package in order to unlock the next fetch quest where you run across an entire zone of a game for hours just to deliver a package in order to unlock the next quest where you kill a bunch of like zebra or something in order to collect their horns in order to unlock the next quest, and you get the idea. Love it or hate it, grinding has a place in many contemporary games. And long commercial games can get away with periods of grind, labor, and stasis, but your games can't. When you have only a minute to engage a player, you need to focus your design on the moment-to-moment gameplay first. And this means you need to focus on the verbs. Let's quickly do a refresher on a simple game design framework, MDA. MDA is the brainchild of Robin Hunicke, Marc LeBlanc, and Robert Zubek. It's a simple way of thinking through the elements of game experiences. The M of MDA stands for mechanics. These are the rules of the game, the underlying logic of the system, and the materials of play. In other words, the mechanics are the things that game designers give players to play with. The A of MDA stands for aesthetics. These aren't aesthetics in the sense of like visual style and appearance, but instead, the aesthetics are the desirable emotional outcomes that a game produces in a player. They are the feelings that a game makes you feel. The D in MDA stands for dynamics. This links the other two together. The dynamics are the runtime behaviors of the player engaging with the mechanics. In other words, they are the things that the player does when they follow the rules or use the game materials. But there's another way to think about MDA. We can think of the mechanics as being like nouns, or the things of the game. We can think of the dynamics like verbs, and we can think of the aesthetics like meanings. And while these all are interesting perspectives from which to design, for this lesson we're going to focus on the verbs. When we focus on the verbs of our game, we ask, what does the player do? The verbs of your game are the actions that the player takes. These include things like key presses and UI manipulations. They also include things like decision-making, choosing, and reacting to stimuli. Your job as a designer is to make certain that these verbs are pleasurable and meaningful for your player. I like to divide the verbs of a game into two broad categories, basic and extra. Now, some of your verbs are going to be used more frequently than others. Your basic attack, your basic movement, your basic turn. These are your basic verbs. Others will be less frequent, a special move, a rare consumable. These are the extra verbs. And a lot of inexperienced designers try to save the really cool stuff for the extra verbs, often by making the basic verbs less exciting to use. And in doing so, they often sacrifice the moment-to-moment dynamics of the game by gatekeeping the most fun abilities via some form of artificial scarcity. When making a portfolio piece, you don't want to have to make your player wait for the special stuff in order to have fun. So, instead, make every basic move special, and then make the special moves ridiculously extra super special. Err on the side of generosity. Let your player feel great about what they're doing from the beginning. There is a time and a place for balance in game design, but right now is not that time. Don't start your game in balance. start overpowered. Start at 11. See how that feels. Then, if it's too much, dial things back until you find the sweet spot. Today's exercise is a verb inventory of your game. This will take multiple members of your team, so grab your collaborators and get ready. Pause this video while you gather your team. Is everybody here? Great. Now decide on one of you to be a note taker and one of you to be a player. Pause here until you're ready to move on. The note taker should be ready to write down verbs and other salient details. The player should be playing the game the way a typical new player would. What we're going to do is create a verb inventory of your game. Working together, have the player play your game while the note taker keeps track of what is happening. Write down every action that your player takes. How long does a player spend in any given game mode? What does routine play look like? What are the things that the player does? Moving a character, walking, running, jumping, productive movement versus backtracking, engaging in combat, using standard abilities or basic abilities, using extra abilities, manipulating a menu, interacting with the interface. How long is your player spending doing each of these things? Once you've done this, take a look at what you've collected. What verbs did your player use the most? Those are your basic verbs. Are they fun? Are they fun to execute? Or are they mundane? What can you do to change your game design to make the most basic verbs feel special? And that's it for the second Fun Doctoring lecture. I'll see you soon with more game design tricks.